Hi, welcome back to the channel. This week it's time to create an intro, and very excitingly, if I'm creating an intro, ironically that means I'm coming towards the end of the track. I'll do a proper video on intros later, but the point is basically to leave the intros to the very end. And they should, if you do it that way, they should be relatively simple. Because essentially the way to do them is just reuse, manipulate, and basically bastardize all the other sounds that you've used so that there are no surprises. You kind of introduce those sounds so when they come later, then they're still kind of in the same vibe. So I'm just going to play back what I currently have for the intro. And the one in red, the one that says intro swell, that's the one we're going to work on today. So as you can see, it's the very, very first sound. It'll start with a kick, and then you'll hear some kind of atmospheric sounds. So that's it for now. We'll play the rest later, but the sound I'm going to create now is this one here that will lead in or introduce or kind of, like it says there, swell into the kick. So let's open our trusty Serum. Now before designing any sound, kind of have an idea in your head of what you're trying to create and basically just articulate it out loud so that you have an idea of where to head. So I want it to be big, and for that I'm going to use unison. I want it to be kind of metallic-like, so in the upper spectrum, but I also want to have a bit of low end frequency as well, and I want it to rise up in both amplitude and also in filter, so essentially with a bandpass filter, and then maybe also a bit of pitch modulation on there as well. That usually works on kind of riser sounds. So now that we have those elements in our head, it's really just a case of implementing them now. So the first thing we're going to do on LFO 1, let's change that to 2 bars because we know the intro, this red section, I'm just going to loop that, is 2 bars. So it goes -15 to -17. And this is just a Cubase thing, don't get confused by this. Essentially the way I work is have a negative count so that the intro sits here and then the first kick always hits at 1. But that's just a Cubase thing, don't worry about that. The point is that the intro, this little sound we're creating, is 2 bars long, which means that our LFO, our main LFO, is going to be 2 bars. Let's draw a little ramp like that. And then, like I said, we're going to use unison. So let's max out the voices, 16. Detune all the way up also. We'll solo this. Let's go to our little cog wheel here. And then we'll turn the range up. So now we have that absolute wall of noise. Now let's choose our wavetable. Let's go down to Serum 2 tables, and the one I quite like, I was playing with earlier, is FM Piano. Let's add a bit of modulation there, so we're going to use LFO 1, and then we'll turn that down around 34 perhaps. I said at the start I wanted it to sweep in amplitude, so let's add some attack here, half a bar. And I also said I wanted to add a bandpass filter. Let's close the EQ, which is just my default filter, and I said bandpass, but in this case I'm going to use one of the multi filters, so low band high, and you can see here when we put it in the middle, that's a bandpass. Bit of resonance, tiny bit of drive. Now we'll attach LFO 1 to the cutoff, go around there perhaps. So as you can see, it's moving that bandpass down from the highs to the lows. But let's also, the reason why I chose the multi one, because I want it to morph from a high pass to a low pass via the bandpass. So let's put this onto morph, and then let's go around here. So like I said, it'll start at a low pass, and then as it progresses, it will morph into a high pass, basically to emphasize the highs. Let's change the LFO to a envelope. And the reason for adding a filter in the FX section rather than in filter 1 and 2 is because I wanted to add a distortion module. So let's put that right at the start. And here I want to add basically a bit crusher to bring out some of that high end. I want it to be quite gritty at the top. The other thing I said was I wanted a bit of pitch modulation. So let's copy LFO1 to LFO2. So that's all the same. And then we're going to attach that to the pitch. Make that unipolar. And turn it down quite substantially. I just want basically a hint of that. The reason for copying across to LFO2 was so that now we can change the curve of that LFO. So it's getting there, but it doesn't quite have the high end that I'm after. So let's add a delay. Let's put that between the distortion and the filter. And here I'm going to use Car Plus Strong, which is basically just using very, very short delay times that correspond with a particular pitch. This track is in D sharp, and I know that this is 10.52 or thereabouts. Turn the feedback up, and the mix all the way up. You'll notice we have that annoying kind of click at the end, but that should only be when it's looping around. If I play the full section, we shouldn't hear that. And indeed we can't, so that's good. Let's add a compressor now to keep everything under control. After the delay, multiband perhaps. Now the other thing I want is I want it to balloon outward, if that makes sense. I want it to start quite narrow and then expand. And I'm not explaining that very well, but it will become evident very shortly. What I'm going to do is add a low pass and a high pass. Turn down the Q here also. Turn the frequency up around the lower mids, and then the same for the highs. Let's go around there. And we're going to attach LFO1 to the frequency. Let's turn that down, so negative modulation, and then positive modulation on the high. So at the start of this curve, it will be quite narrow, but then this will widen as the sound progresses. Hence the ballooning effect that I was mentioning. Let's just add a bit of conventional delay on there at the end. Let's go 1/8, link those. The rest can stay as is. We're getting there. It doesn't quite have the timbre that I'm going for though. So let's add another filter. Let's put this one before the original filter. And here we're going to add a comb filter. So flanges, comb plus. Resonance up. So now you can hear what I'm going for. Let's copy LFO2 to LFO3. I will attach that to the cutoff of the comb, and then we'll change this curve so it's not much happening at the start, and then towards the end, it basically sweeps up quite dramatically. Let's play back 2 sections, or in this case 4 bars. Let's add a bit of a secret ingredient, not as Superhands would say crime, but our delay, our master delay for Echo Boy, and also for our shimmer reverb. Have a listen now to what we have. And with a bit of fine tuning on the parameters, nothing special, just tiny amounts of adjustment on the cutoff of the comb filter and also the bandpass filter. Not much at all, just tiny amounts here and there. We have this, just the intro sound for now. And then playing back the full thing. I'll let you hear all the way to the first kick. Keep in mind this sound here is work in progress, so that sounds terrible, so ignore that. This is what we currently have for the intro of the track. So there we go, how to create a, well, what I'm going to say is a impactful intro sound. You can be the judge, obviously, and hopefully that, combined with the rest of the intro sounds, maintain enough interest for the listener. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.